Hello again, third grade, and welcome to Chapter 5, Lesson 3, Why Do Communities Need Local Government? In this lesson, you're going to use your investigative skills to learn about local governments in the United States. Reading and talking about local governments in the United States will help you understand why communities need these local governments. Let's go ahead and jump ahead into our first pages. We're going to read the information in our blue bar. Read the primary source quote, who wrote this, circle the subject of the page, underline the important points that John Marshall made about Native American nations. Reread the statement, Indian nations have always been considered as distinct, independent political communities. What does the word independent mean? Name a word that has the same meaning as independent. So you can go ahead and fill in your answer over here in the My Notes section. And let's go ahead and start reading. A Supreme Court ruling. The Cherokee Native Americans lived in the Southeast United States. In the early 1800s, leaders in the state of Georgia tried to make the Cherokee people move from their homelands. Samuel Worcester, a friend of the Cherokee, lived on their land. Leaders in Georgia did not want Worcester to help the Cherokee. They passed a law saying only Cherokee people could live on Cherokee land. Worcester was arrested for breaking the law and sent to prison. Worcester asked the Supreme Court to hear his case. In 1832, the Supreme Court ruled the Georgia law was wrong. John Marshall was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. In their words, John Marshall. Indian nations have always been considered as distinct, independent political communities, retaining their original natural rights as the undisputed possessors of their soil. The very term nation, so generally applied to them, means a people distinct from others. He wrote that Native American nations were separate and independent from the United States. Justice Marshall said that states could not tell Native American nations what to do. It was an important decision. Troy Fletcher, executive director of the Yurok people, meets with the state officials to talk about how to manage the Klamath River land. Let's go ahead and jump in to our graphic organizers here. So our graphic organizers for this lesson are a little bit more involved than the ones we've done before, but that's okay. That means we're getting better at doing these. So we have ones that are more detailed. Now for this one, we're going to explore summarizing. A summary is a short retelling of the important ideas of a text in your own words. So you read the text once all the way through and look for the main ideas. Then reread the text and look for key details and tell what the text says in your own words. So remember, we talked about this in language arts as well. When you're summarizing, you're not telling someone the whole story. So if you want to summarize a book that you read, you're not going to tell someone exactly every single word that was in the book. You're going to tell them just the important bits. And that's what a summary is. So let's take a look over here at our graphic organizer. It says leaders in Georgia arrested a non-Cherokee man living on a Cherokee reservation. So another thing we can say is that case went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decided that Georgia could not arrest someone on a Native American reservation because Native American nations are independent. The summary is that leaders in Georgia arrested a non-Cherokee man living on a Cherokee reservation. The case went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled that the Native American nations are independent from the states and they can make their own laws and control their own land. Now for our next page, we're going to take a look at pages 224 to 233 in our textbook, and we are going to fill in this chart. So the state government, the local government, and Native American nations, we're going to have our main idea, some details, and then summarize what we learned from each of those sections. Every state, including your state, has its own government and its own constitution. Your state's government is similar to the federal government. The state government has 3 branches, just like the federal government. All 3 branches work together to help your state run smoothly. The legislative branch makes the laws in your state. In every state but Nebraska, the legislative branch is made up of 2 parts. Nebraska has just 1 part in it. The legislative branch meets in your state's capital. The head of your state's executive branch is called the governor. The judicial branch reviews state laws to see if they are fair. The judicial branch includes all of the state courts. Here we have a picture of former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley as she signs a bill into law. The state government meets different needs than the federal government. The state government takes care of state roads and parks. It also helps decide what you learn in school. State laws say how old you must be to drive a car or to get married. Lawyers and other professionals have to pass state tests before they can do their jobs in the state. The state also sets up elections for its citizens. These are issues that directly affect people every day. Not all states have the same laws. For example, in Missouri, you can get an instruction permit to drive when you're 15 years old and get your intermediate license when you were 16. In Iowa, you can get your learner's permit when you were 14. Where does the state get the money to pay for things like roads, parks, and schools? It comes from taxes. A tax is the money that people must pay to support the government. People pay a sales tax when they buy certain items. They pay an income tax on money that they earn from their job. Taxes are used to pay for things that benefit everyone in the state. Biography. Governor Eric Holcomb. Eric Holcomb became Indiana's 51st governor in January 2017. Before that, he served as a lieutenant governor. Governor Holcomb wants all Indiana schools to provide computer science for its students. He wants to make sure that students have the skills to succeed in future jobs. Governor Holcomb is also focused on increasing Indiana's role in the global economy. He has encouraged foreign corporations to do business in their state. The United States Constitution divides power between the federal and state government. Only the federal government can do certain things, such as declare war and print money. State governments control things the United States Constitution does not specify as a power of the federal government. Both federal and state governments can pass laws, raise taxes, and borrow money. Sometimes the federal government directs all states to follow the same rule, such as to reduce air pollution. State governments work together with local governments to provide services. Local governments are created by the state. They must follow the state constitution and all the state laws. So if we want to take a look at our graphic organizer, we can say over here for a state government, the state government provides things like roads and parks, and the laws are different in each state. And we know that the states use taxes to pay for services that they provide for people. And then you'll take all that information and summarize it. And your response in the summary section can be something along the lines of states pass laws and raise taxes to provide roads, parks, and other services. For local governments, we started reading that local governments provide services that people use every day, and our local government is organized like the national and the state government. So let's keep reading and see what more we learn about our local governments. Local governments. Who hires firefighters and police officers? Who decides if a street corner needs a traffic light? Your local government does. Local governments affect our everyday lives. Local city governments have executive and legislative branches, just like the federal and state governments. The legislative branch of a local government is usually called a city council. The city council makes laws for the city. The mayor is the head of the city council. Citizens vote for the mayor and city council members. In some cities throughout the country, the executive branch is headed by a city manager. The city manager carries out the city's council's plans. In some larger cities, such as Chicago and New York, the mayor is the head of the executive branch. Most cities don't have their own court systems. They use the county courts. Many minor crimes, such as traffic tickets, are judged in local courts. A judge listens to the issues brought before him or her and follows the law to make make fair decisions. Local governments provide many services: fire departments, police, libraries, parks, road repairs, and local museums. Most local city councils meet every week at the city hall. Citizens can attend city council meetings. At each meeting, the council listens to the concerns of the citizens. Then the council decides what actions to take. In some locations, citizens can watch city council meetings on television. Like state governments, local governments provide important services to people. One major difference between state and local governments is the sharing of power. Local governments have only the power that the state gives them. Okay, so we can jump back into our graphic organizer and we can talk about local governments. We said local governments provide services that people use every day, that they're set up and organized like the national and state governments. City councils pass laws, and city managers or mayors run the executive branch of local governments. And then to summarize, we can say the city council has legislative power, the mayor or city manager has executive power, and judges have judicial power in our local courts. Next, we need to take a look at Native American nations. So let's keep reading. Tribal governments. When European settlers came to America hundreds of years ago, they treated Native American groups as independent nations. They often signed treaties with the nations. A treaty is a formal agreement between nations. The United States made many promises in the treaties that it signed with Native Americans. In one treaty, the United States promised Native Americans they could continue to govern themselves. The United States Constitution recognizes that tribal nations have the right to govern themselves. Native Americans are citizens of the United States. They are also citizens of their own tribal nations. As American citizens, they are citizens of the state where they live. They vote in national, state, and local elections. Native Americans also follow local, state, and national laws. Native Americans also have their own governments. Tribal members choose leaders to make laws. States cannot tell tribal governments what to do. However, the federal government can pass laws that affect tribal affairs. Tribal governments work like other local and state governments. They provide community services to members of the tribes of their reservation. Tribal governments also encourage businesses to come to the community, and they work to preserve their own cultures and support education. Perspectives. A large area of land in Oklahoma is claimed by both the Creek Nation and the state of Oklahoma. Who owns it? Questions like this are sometimes decided by the United States Supreme Court. The case involves a claim about the original Creek Nation's reservation. The state claims that the land has not belonged to the tribe since Oklahoma became a state. The Creek Nation claims that the reservation was never officially taken away. This is an example of a time when the federal government makes decisions that impact tribal affairs. So in our graphic organizer, we can put in that Native Americans are citizens of the US and of their own nations. The tribal governments provide services to members of the tribe. The tribal members choose their own leaders and make their own laws. And then to summarize that, we can say that Native American nations are independent. Tribal governments provide services and pass laws. Now, next in our writing sections, under where it says write about it, it says describe a blog post or write a blog post describing your local government and explain how it works. And then for the connect to the essential question, how do local governments help communities? So for these, make sure you pull information from the text, use your text evidence and your resources to put together a well-written and detailed response. Remember to check your spelling and grammar on everything. And if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.